Yes, I am back. You all saw me here on Empty the Bench a little earlier today on episode 69. And right now, all of a sudden, I'm back. So, yeah, we're not talking baseball or football here. No, UFC 257 is tonight. It's a big holiday for MMA fans, for UFC fans. It's like Christmas. And I have a guest with me. This is According to Woods. You can find him on the Voodoo in the Woods podcast. Sir, thank you for coming on here.
No worries, no worries. And Thomas, one of the hardest men in all of sports, you are. You're doing a twofer. You're doing a two-a-day, if I can appropriately use a sports analogy. But yes, I mean, empty the bench. We're emptying the bench, much like Otman Altazar empties his UFC opportunity.
What? Now, we have something here on Empty the Bench in the normal podcast where we have funny transitions like this, and you're already welcome at home. All right. Let's talk about, obviously, we will go through some of the main card matchups, look over the prelims a bit, but let's talk about some of the storylines heading into this card. So, Otman Azayatar, he, I think, has overshadowed anything. Like, we had some news this week of, like, the McGregor lawsuit, all the Dana White and the Pirates. We'll get to Dana White and the Pirates in a second. Azatar has seemed to have topped everything by pulling what he has pulled. So, Otman Azayatar, for those of you who are not aware, for those of you who are more casual MMA fans, because I know a bunch of people who like Empty the Bench may not be as hardcore of MMA fans. So, Otman Azayatar was like 11-0, 12-0, 9 knockouts, 2 highlight performances in the UFC so far. He was scheduled to take on Matt Frivola on the main card, which, by the way, I give the UFC a ton of credit. I gave the UFC a ton of credit for. Steamroller versus Bulldozer. Excellent matchmaking based on nicknames alone. Then, all of a sudden, around the time of the weigh-in, I think like 20 minutes or so into it, we find out Zayatar's not on the card. Now, this happens. It's, weigh-in day. People miss weight. Nasrat actually ended up pulling out because of weight cut issues. We'll get to that. But then Otman Azayatar, as we come to find out, has all of a sudden, not only is he not on the card, he's out of the promotion. Because according to Dana, I'm trying my best to describe it how he described it because it's a Dana White way of describing it. He and his team took their wristbands, put them together, gave it to some guy who snuck across balconies and lit the bag like it's some James Bond movie. In one of the most bizarre circumstances I have ever seen. Now, we talk a lot on Empty the Bench about like the bubbles with all the sports leagues, and maybe they should go back, all the complications, everything. This took it to a whole nother level.
Yeah, I mean, could there be a more spectacular fall from grace? I mean, this to essentially eradicate or extract yourself from the UFC promotion. I mean, he went through almost Tom Cruise Mission Impossible style lengths to exit himself from the promotion. And I don't know, I don't want to say we'll never see it again, because I'm sure that we will see somebody of an ilk that will even top him 5 years from now. But 2020, this is almost like the gentleman, I can't remember his name, who wore tight trunks and with the blue.
Dennis Hallman?
Yes.
Oh my
God.
Right?
There's Hallman, right? Gets it win, whatever, in his Speedos, and essentially exit himself because Dana White didn't like what he saw. So to it, leave it to Otman, who, again, they saw all of this, and I don't understand the methodology, right? Like,
I don't
go through this. You're from Morocco, right? Like, you basically flew in EFAD Airways and went through the protocol, the 2 weeks in isolation, and you've done this before. The last time when you made your UFC debut, you went through similar protocols. So how do you not know that they would be not stringent enough to maybe record every room that the fighters are in?
And you got to give... I don't know either. And you got to give Dana White actually some credit here, because I know we have given him some shit over the last year about, when they were first starting with starting to do events while the pandemic has still been going on. But they did figure it out. And I think, honestly, still connecting it to the normal podcast topics, I think Dana White has made a bigger statement than, say, a commissioner like in the Big Four, like Goodell or Silver. He has made a statement. You screw something up, especially with as big of card as Conor and Dustin is going to be, you're gone. Doesn't matter if you're an undefeated fighter or not. And, maybe we'll see him again in the UFC. I don't know. I mean, this is the fact that it's COVID and the fact that it's, because we've seen fighters get another chance, but I don't know. This is a bad one.
Well, yeah, and again, in 2020, where we had a fighter quit on the stool, we've had iterations of like spectacular falls from grace, right? But I mean, this one again, imagine all the things that you're going through as a fighter, right? In terms of preparation and remembering the game plan, listening to your coaches, making sure your weight is on point, all of these things, right? I'm going to pull a heist to cut off one of my wristband, scale down a wall, or a balcony or eight, and essentially grab one of my buddies or whatever, switch wristbands with him, bring him into quarantine. Like nobody's going to notice. Like, I don't know. And I again, I am a MMA personality, right? I am not a fighter. I'm a forever white belt in jiu-jitsu, right? So with that all being said, I don't know what it takes, but the amount of effort that it took for him to smuggle somebody in to the UFC bubble in Abu Dhabi, imagine if he had given maybe an eighth of the consideration to his actual fight. What would have happened, right?
He was on the fast track to success with how he was going.
Absolutely. And here's the crazy thing about it, right? So now his opponent, Matt Frivola, was paired up with none other than Armin, right? An Armenian fighter that was also his opponent drop out, right? So he's fighting.
Right.
But even still, as of before we went live, on Tapology, he's not the favorite. So how can you be two opponents and you're still not the favorite? So
ouch.
Yes.
But at the very least, Frivola can enjoy now his opponent's 20% fine that has to go to him because of the weight miss. So maybe it makes up a little bit for this situation with Hotman. I don't know.
But then again, what was his fight and show money, right? So I mean, if it was like $2,500, good luck, Matt Frivola. You got an extra $250 to your credit.
Yeah. All right. Moving on now to another topic that I just mentioned. So Dana White, I'd like it here, is promising hell for pirate broadcasters and viewers. So basically, with McGregor fighting, of course, piracy is going to be at an all-time high. So Dana has warned over the last few weeks, we are going to find you, and there will not be any mercy on you guys, which is a weird sentiment considering, you can't really go after the viewers, maybe. I mean, it's harder to do because there's multiple pirates and probably millions of viewers. And I think Dana actually recognized that, but he said he targeted one individual and said, we're going to nab this guy and we're going to make an example of him.
Yeah, so here's the thing. Did Dana White, somewhere in quarantine on the way from Vegas to Abu Dhabi, summon the Old Testament Jesus? I mean, this really... I feel like he's commanding something. Hellfire and brimstone and whatever. And he's on the Tammy Faye Baker train for success and whatever. Sans makeup. But with all being said, I mean, realistically, Brendan Schaub is the MVP. If in a previous year of boycotts and everything like that, as soon as I saw that Crack Streams was gone down, and here's the quiet little deal here, right? The ethos of, hey, buy a pay-per-view, a UFC pay-per-view. Now, I'm not talking about regional shows. I'm not talking about Bellator, who absolutely need the money. But the fact that the UFC, the narrative was buy UFC pay-per-view, support the fighters, right? When the fighter pay is essentially the same in terms of when they started on ESPN to, it's absolutely decreased. It was in the six figures And in terms of sponsorship and with the Reebok deal, it's maybe a high 50 if you're on the elk of like Josh Barnett, who has literally fought for every promotion under the Tufa brand other than EC, right? And
Probably.
yeah. So with that all being said, it's weird. It's weird. But to your point, you actually said that Khabib, after all of this, says, "Hey, Russian stream." So shout out to Mother Russia, I guess.
Yeah. So I'm going to give credit here to Shaquille Moroji, of Fightful, a former fan-sided colleague of mine, and he actually credited someone here about this. Trying to figure out who it is. Oh, to at Menatalk on Twitter, Ewan Ross. Basically, it is a video. It is a video clip of one of these exchanges between Cormier and Khabib. If you ever see these videos of them training at AKA, you know the friendship between those two, Luke Rockhold and all of them. And I'll read right here from Shaq's article. Cormier, I guess, is talking to the guys, and he's doing the plug. You know, he's the UFC commentator. He's doing the plug. I think he's commentating tonight's card. He said, ESPN app, buy. It's only $70. To which Khabib looks at him and goes, buy? We have Russian link.
And that's, I mean, shout out to Khabib. And I mean, he might not be the pound for pound GOAT. I'm going to dispute that pretty much. But without hoping, because nobody on the GOAT contendership list has a win over Al Iaquinta in the path to greatness. Nothing against, reaching out.
Hey,
I'm just saying.
Hey, those real estate deals, though.
Yes. Oh, MVP. Oh my goodness. Yeah, he's killing it in upstate New York. So shout out to Raging Al Iaquinta for that. He's almost like a Miles Jury, right? Miles Jury out in Florida, and not just real estate, but also the YouTube deal, which I'm still trying to figure out. My goodness. But shout out to these guys, and look no further than the UFC 257 main eventer in Conor McGregor in terms of everything is not going to lie based on the promotion, because obviously, the UFC is getting the equivalent of 250 paid buys for every time they run a pay-per-view, in addition to your $80, right? And that's probably going to be high six figures, if not $1 million pay-per-view buys, right? Even with the added $15 increase, right? But again, none of that is going to trickle into the fighters, right? So here's the deal. If you want to support the fighters on this card, you go to their Instagram, you see if they have a YouTube channel, subscribe to that. If they've got a piece of merch that is not, that is non-Reebok affiliated, because again, Reebok money goes to the UFC, like literally a fifth of that goes to the actual fighter. So with that all being said, you go see if they've got some merch, get some swag by any one of the fighters that are working independently of Reebok, and go ahead and buy you a piece of swag. I warmly encourage you to do that. Then that is my kind of way of making myself feel better for looking at Khabib's social media timelines for that Russian stream.
Now, imagine if Khabib is the one guy that Dana was like, we got him, and we're going to watch him.
Then if that's the case, then maybe I'm going to retract my statements about Khabib being the one pound for pound greatest of all time. And he's just like the Fall Out Boy song, like a number one with a bullet.
FBI just bursting out Khabib's.
Yes, dance with the whole the Kazakhstani war hat. Fuck yeah, it sounds like a good time. Shlomo Naya and everything. Why not?
And speaking of Khabib, all right, so I guess we can get into the card a little bit, but before we go full into the main event and co-main event, let's look at this from the title situation and his retirement perspective. So we got that announcement last week, which that wasn't much of an announcement. So Khabib might fight again. He might not fight again. We got this report from MMA Fighting, I guess via one of the Russian channels, where basically Khabib still says he has no plans to fight again. So for whatever reason, Dana still wants him to try for the 30-0. I guess still trying to go for that money of a Khabib Conor rematch. So tonight's main event between Conor and Dustin, not for the title despite being 5 rounds. Chandler Hooker's 3 rounds, normal co-main event, no title implications there. Oh, I shouldn't say no title implication. There are implications of some degree. If I can actually pull up on the UFC rankings here. So this is the UFC rankings. This is only, though, as of Monday. This is before the Chiesa Magny fight night. So you got Khabib as still the champion for whatever reason, despite announcing his retirement in the octagon. Gaethje at 1, Poirier's at 2, McGregor's at 4. Smack between them is Charles Oliveira, who bested Tony Ferguson, who's at number 5. Dan Hooker's at number 6. And then on the way down, RDA, Felder, Carlos Diego Vieira, and Ally Quinta. So there should be huge implications here for what to do with the lightweight title. I was thinking, kind of like what that guy was thinking at the press conference. Why don't this was an opportunity to have a Grand Prix or a tournament of sorts to determine a champion. And in a way it still is, but it's kind of everything's more up in the air as it is firm. Like, we are nowhere closer to resolving this title situation than we were at the start of last week when that announcement was teased.
Yeah, which in retrospect, do you remember the announcement of CM Punk and infamous "Luck is for Losers" interview with Joe Rogan?
Yep.
Right, that actually proved more credible than Dana's announcement of Khabib. Right, because he basically was like, I don't know. Right, this almost reminds me, if you're a pro wrestling fan, of when he basically was in TNA and he was just like, "We've got big news" and whatever, and it's just like, "Oh, I had tuna salad for lunch." That was on the Twitter of Impact Wrestling and what have you. Right, so at least the CM Punk Luck is for Losers produced 2 fights. Whether they were good or not, that's debatable. But I'm just saying, we got 2 fights out of that. Dana's announcement, not there. Right?
It's a maybe, it's a maybe not. It's like there is no firm thing. It's just Khabib saying, I'm going to watch. But when you look at those comments when he told that Russian channel that MMA Fighting, all the other outlets got, it doesn't seem like this guy wants to fight again. He wants to keep the promise he made to his mother after losing his father to COVID, basically that, after the Gaethje fight, he's not going to fight again. And if that's the case, why is the title not on the line in Conor versus Dustin? Or why is there no tournament? Or why is there no more firm title implications? Everything's more theoretic.
Yeah, well, and that's the crazy thing about it, right? Because, I mean, look no further than Daniel Cormier when he went in to fight Stipe. Like, literally, if you caught it, at the moment that he walks out of his locker room, he has vacated his light heavyweight title, and essentially to win the whatever.
Heavyweight title, yeah.
Right. There have been instances. So I've got, and I know I trash Shaw, but I'm going to use one of his euphemisms. But I mean, I've got skeptical hippo eyes, right? Of what's really going on. Because if you're retired, you shouldn't be on the rankings. You shouldn't. And for somebody that was, when Conor was on top, he was basically lambasting Conor about, hey, you're clogging the division and everything. If you're actually retired, that is it. And it's, again, I'm not clamoring for another Khabib fight, right? I'm not clamoring for a Khabib Conor fight because it's probably going to go the exact same way that the first one did, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. And I actually, you're going to talk about taking a page out of Shaw's book. I'm actually going to look at one of Dana's quote, one of his euphemisms. He talks about, if the R word ever pops into your head, you are retired. But now all of a sudden, because it's Khabib and it was so sudden, it's like, oh, no, please come back. It's like, that's a little hypocritical.
A little hypocritical? Wait, but Dana's never told us a lie ever, right? No, that doesn't happen. But again, this should be, right? And especially with, all of the ingredients are there, right? Poirier being a former interim champion, right? And if you rank in Conor, despite the inactivity, despite the catchweight bout with Cerrone and whatever, I mean, he's still ranked really high, right?
He, at the end of the day, is still a former champ. He was the guy who started the champ business.
Right, exactly. Right. So the fact about it is, I mean, this just tells me how important the Russian market is to the UFC, because again, this wouldn't happen for anyone else. Make no mistake about it, right? Look at how quickly they pulled the title off of Tony Ferguson, right? And that was an interim title in itself, right?
Right.
So I don't know what's going on, but theoretically, I don't care what it actually says. The winner of the horrendous Dixie Paper Plate Golden Championship, and I'm a fan of the old belts. So if you can figure that,
I understand it. Yep.
right. It should be the winner of this, and then the winner of the aforementioned
Hooker Chandler.
Hooker Chandler. That's a number one contender deal. Right,
it sounds that simple, or even if it's not that simple, there's other guys you got to take into consideration. Gaethje is also a former interim champion. You're telling me we wouldn't, I would want to see McGregor versus Gaethje and all that bad blood, or a rematch between Gaethje and Poirier, who, a little strong of an opinion from me, might be a bad one, but I think that was as competitive as Whitaker Romero 2 for the 2018 Fight of the Year. And Oliveira. Hey, Oliveira is on a big winning streak and just dominated Tony Ferguson, who we thought was at least second or third, if not the best lightweight fighter in the world. Now all of a sudden, Oliveira, you got to consider him for the title shot. I'm just saying, this situation with Khabib was, you had an opportunity to more firmly place the sights of, more firmly dedicate how the lightweight title picture in the future is going to go. All of a sudden now, that's bad on Dana. That was an L.
Yeah, but it will be under the rug swept with another awesome card, the pay-per-view numbers and everything like that. I mean, to quote the $1 Million Man, everybody's got a price for the $1 million man. And Dana is that million, if not $1 billion man. So, I mean, again, the fact that Conor couldn't even wrangle, a percentage of ownership, a minimal percentage of ownership stake in the UFC, tells you everything you need to know. That even if Conor McGregor doesn't have the buying power for anything to happen, good luck if you're, I don't know, Ottman trying to get back into the UFC. Jeez, you're up a river without a boat, with soiled feet. Like, it's just bad. It's not looking good for any fighters, and that right here, and especially the fact, like, what does a title really mean? What does a title really mean? Right.
I mean, we question about, the worth of a championship, considering that every time McGregor's not fighting or Masvidal is not fighting, there has to be some sort of belt on the line, even if it's an interim belt.
Right, and so quickly will they slap an interim belt on anything else, right?
Yeah.
But especially, again, right now, the reason why, you're not going to put a $15+ increase, right? And I live in California, so that's, out of the gate, we're at $100 because whatever it is, you add another $20 on top of that for California state tax, 7.25, or if not 8 already.
Yeah.
So with that all being said, you're not going to get that pay increase for a Khabib fight, even if he comes back and essentially goes after 30-0. You're not going to get that out of that. Conor McGregor is the outlier, folks. I don't like some of the things that he's done. I don't like the things that he's said about Khabib's wife and everything like that. But then there's 70% of all of the stuff that Conor said about Khabib that ends up being true. So with that all being said, why is this not, give Conor what he wants, right? If you want the added spoils of having a Conor McGregor card with an added bit of monetary value out of your viewers, in addition to your 250+ equivalent, 250+ thousand equivalent of the ESPN buy, give him what he wants. Give us what we want. Give us what we want. We want Conor McGregor as champion, right? And whoever he fights, again, let Red Party Night, Patty Night commence, is what I'm saying. Because
and even if Dustin won, I would love Dustin versus Justin Gaethje again, a rematch of that. I would love Dustin to fight Oliveira, or finally have that fight with Tony Ferguson that ended up getting canceled.
Chandler,
absolutely. we'll see how Chandler fares against Hooker tonight. And somebody actually pointed out on Twitter, also keep in mind that Poirier and McGregor needed to threaten to do a charity fight outside of the UFC for the UFC to book this fight.
Yeah, that shows you exactly how much bargaining power that any fighter has. If two of arguably the people's, I'm going to borrow from The Rock, the
people's champions, yeah,
right, and what are we doing? Put a title on it. Again, that's what I want to say. I mean, if you want to do announcements, that's an announcement right at the beginning of the Telegraph cast. This main event with Conor McGregor and Dustin Poirier. Guess what? It has been moved in the wake of the retirement of Khabib Nurmagomedov, either an interim, if not lineal, championship bout.
Definitely. So now let's, I guess, take a look at just the fights itself. So first of all, we do have prelims coming up in about half an hour, starting with the two early prelim fights. Let me get those here. Nick Lentz and Movsar Ovalev, Zalgas Zumagulov, and Amir Albazi. And then the main prelims at 8 p.m. on ESPN. We got interesting matchups. Khalil Roundtree Jr., Marcin Prachnio, Sarah McMahon, Julia Pena, Brad Tavares, Antonio Carlos Jr., and as we mentioned before, Arman Sarukian against Matt Frevola. So, Mr. Woods, I'd like to ask you a question. What fighters or which fight, anything that fans need to watch out for? Because everybody, of course, will focus on the pay-per-view card. But, we have, I'm not sure if we can say prospects because there's a lot more veteran talent this time around on the prelims than prospect talent. But what fighters competing on either the prelim or early prelims do people need to watch out for? Or if there's a matchup in mind, you can use that too.
If you have a high school American education, chances are every name that you cannot pronounce on this card will probably win. So if you can't pronounce Arman Sarukian, and again, I had to read that 3 times as the wonderful host here up on the dais. But yes, I mean that's it. If Matt Frevola, unfortunately, again the aforementioned match with Ottman, again Matt Frevola wasn't picked as the winner, right? It wasn't picked as the favorite. So this kind of like Frankenstein match, that's not happening either, right? I actually think that Antonio Carlos Jr. is going to try and make a statement of a veteran of Brad Tavares. Now, Brad Tavares has an incredible record in terms of experience in the UFC, but I think this is just almost a layup. I mean, this is almost like a John Stockton to Karl Malone layup to dunk that Antonio Carlos Jr. is going to make a statement. And when we're looking at social media, pre the Conor McGregor Dustin Poirier fight, we're literally the things that are going to be posted on Instagram is an Antonio Carlos Jr. KO of Brad Tavares. And I'm a Brad Tavares fan, but it just doesn't look good for Tavares.
Definitely.
Also that Sarah McMahon, the Sarah McMahon, Juliana Pena, that's going to be amazing. I think in terms, I don't think we're going to get a knockout. We might get a submission, whatever, but I mean, this is going to be a dogfight between two veterans. Sarah McMahon, obviously a former UFC bantamweight contender under, going up against Ronda Rousey, and unfortunately didn't work out her way. She achieved infamy for different reasons, but
and Pena won, I think, that season that Rousey and Tate ended up coaching on The Ultimate Fighter together.
Yes, she did. So I think it's going to be crazy. I think that Khalil Roundtree and Marcin Prachnio is going to be crazy too, because I mean, again, I don't know. I don't care. I don't want to say I don't care what Khalil Roundtree does for the rest of his career, because you outstruck none other than one of the greatest strikers ever. And why am I blanking on his name now? I added. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Like former Glory champion. But yeah, I expect Khalil Roundtree to actually knock out Marcin, and Marcin is coming off of.
Are you talking about Gohan Saki?
Gohan Saki, absolutely. You know, that KO of Saki, how you can outstrike one of the greatest strikers in the game at that moment. That is something, and it's But I think I think that's a like a history name making performance, and I think he's going to be chasing the dragon tonight. Now, again, I say a round tree KO, but he's going to earn every bit of it because Marcin's chin is absolutely incredible. We've seen it in his previous outings in the octagon. So
he does have an incredible chin, Marcin, but he also was stopped like 3 times in the first round in those fights. But I mean, you look at the talent again that he's facing. He was facing. Actually, let me see if I can actually pull up the Tapology rather than just that card here. Sorry, so right here. So
rankings are not great if you're trying to do a rundown.
Yeah, so here's but you look at the fighters that he fought: Sam Alvey, Magomed Ankalaev, and Mike Slow Rodriguez. I mean, like those are all bad losses, and he had that 2-year layoff. But credit, those are 3 names. Yeah. Those are 3 legit names. And Khalil Roundtree Jr. Actually, I never realized it until like MMA Fighting, and I was watching their streams, was talking about it. He apparently retired for a brief time during this pandemic. And I mean, he is coming back. Let's see. He has the win over Saki, like you said. He has the win over Eric Anders, which Eric Anders actually took to Twitter after UFC 236 and called it the biggest ass whooping he had ever had since he was born.
Yes.
So, and the losses. I mean, Johnny Walker and Ian Kutalaba. 2 more actual names. So this is actually going to be a good fight, I think. I think Roundtree is probably going to get the job done by KO TKO, but he's, like you said, he's going to have to earn it. Yes. The McMahon and Pena fight, I agree with you. I think that one's going to be all-out war. I might lean towards McMahon for the Muay Thai more. Matt Frevola, I have to give credit to because he actually is coming in off some big wins. Beat Jalen Turner, beat Luis Pena. He's had some cancellations with the Roosevelt Roberts and Frank Camacho, but I kind of agree with you that Armin is just a beast. I think Frevola might actually end up struggling against. I don't know if there's going to be a finish there, but I can see, Frevola. Like, I'm giving him a shot, but I'm leaning towards Armin with that one. Now, the Brad Tavares Antonio Carlos Jr. one. When I was looking at the UFC website, here's something that baffled me. Plus 105 odds for Antonio Carlos Jr. Now, Brad Tavares, I've talked to Brad. He's a cool dude and everything, but he lost to Izzy in 2018. Right. We did not see him again until UFC 244 in the Garden, where he was finished by the Golden Boy, Edmund Shabazian. Yes. And now we haven't seen him since that, and he's fighting this Antonio Carlos Jr., who is a little bit on a roll. This, even though Tavares, is the favorite in this one, this smells like a trap matchup for the odds. Like Antonio Carlos Jr., I mean, actually not a trap matchup. There was another one on here that was trap. I was going to say the Roundtree one, I think I called trap only because minus 335 odds. That's, I think, a little high for him. For the Carlos Jr. one, that's a perfect matchup. That, like you said, I think if you're doing parlays or something, that's a layup.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would, in terms of like, kind of setup fights, I want Nick Lenz, the Carney, right? I mean, I'm an old school wrestling fan. He's a Carney. Of course, I love Nick Lenz, right? But I think Movsar Emelov, like that. Again, I think that's a layup for him. That's a history-making performance. Look at the miles that Nick Lenz has put on his body, right? Versus a young upstart who is pretty much undefeated. He's undefeated, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that, if it goes to the decision in that one, I will be surprised, and especially the fact that Movsar is training in Thailand, much like, and that's one thing that we didn't mention about Roundtree. Roundtree he moved. He
trained in Thailand.
Yeah, he grew up where, kind of like me, in the South Bay area of Los Angeles, and he essentially moved everything, right? And so to it, his coach, same deal. Joe Henley, Leonidas, former UFC Ultimate Fighter veteran, cast member, essentially he's there too. So maybe because they're my friends, but that's the way I feel it's going to go. And again, I just think their opponents have a little bit more miles on their body than their young kind of opponents of the night. So
yeah, and like you said, Evelev, he's undefeated. He's actually a former M1 Challenge bantamweight champion, and he's taken on Lentz. All respect to Lentz. He's had some wars and he's had some wins here. Will Brooks, who I consider one of the biggest disappointments to come from Bellator into the UFC, sadly, because I was a fan of him. Gray Maynard, Scott Holtzman. But he's had some losses as of late. He dropped the decision to Arnold Allen at the start of last year. He got finished by Charles Oliveira. That was like their fourth meeting, which is kind of bizarre. David Turner, Islam Makiev. So this is a huge opportunity here if your name is Movsar Avolev. And then, of course, because we were going through all the prelims, I think we should just go on to, let's talk about the first fight of the evening, the one that's about to make their walk to the octagon in about 20 minutes. Amir Albazi. And let's start with Amir Albazi. So win over Malcolm Gordon, win over Ryan Curtis. A loss to Jose Shorty Torres, who in Brave CF. So, but a good debut, first round submission of Malcolm Gordon in the UFC back on one of the last Fight Island trips in the summer. And then Zalgas Zumagulov, who ended up dropping a decision to Paiva also during the first stint on Fight Island. And credit to him, actually, a former flyweight champion in Fight Nights Global. I think you got a pretty good, that's actually, I think, a sleeper of an opener. Like, people might sleep on that and not realize, there's a reason the flyweight division, if you watch the latest championship fights from the last year, is probably one of the best divisions in terms of the action.
No, 100%. I couldn't agree with you anymore. And I mean, look at Zalgas, dude. I mean, part Russian Federation, part like Chinese Mongolian ancestry. That dude, I mean, I don't know what Genghis Khan looked like, but I'm pretty sure it looked a little bit like Zalgas, right? So, yeah. I mean, no disrespect to Amir Albazi, who came off of an incredible win, but I'm going with Zalgas. That just, to me, like, again, it's almost like Bigfoot, like his head. It's like Bigfoot Silva. Like, how are you gonna knock that out until you knock it out? And then,
I mean, this is a pretty close matchup. It's two of, as you see here on Tapology, they rank in their rankings when they consider everybody number 17 and number 18 in the world. You got two of the best flyweights, basically, who are outside of the UFC until 2020, now going to go head to head to start off this night. I'm kind of excited for that one.
And I'm excited that I don't have to check on Habib's social media feed for this fight. The fact that a $4.99 ESPN Plus subscription, that I'm going to get this part of the card for free. So yeah, that'll be my fight of the night, probably just because I can actually see it and not feel guilty about it.
All right, now let's go to the main card. So let's start things off. Marina Rodriguez, Amanda Rivas. So Amanda Rivas has got, she was signed in 2017. She didn't come till 2 years later because of some USADA issue. And she has actually done very well for herself in the UFC so far. You got the submission of Emily Whitmire, the win over Mackenzie Dern, win over Marcos, sending Paige Van Zandt into free agency back on the first Fight Island stint. And she's taking on Marina Rodriguez, who is coming off a split decision loss to Carla Esparza during the first Fight Island stint, has wins over Jessica Aguilar, Tisha Torres, two very tough veterans. Aguilar pretty much a four-figure in terms of the women's MMA scene. A draw against Calvillo and a draw against Randa Marcos. Everyone, if you look at the Topology predictions, almost everybody's going with Rivas, which I kind of agree. There is a big split between, is it going to be a submission or is it going to be a decision? In my mind, it's going to be a decision. She has great groundwork. Rivas. But I mean, Marina Rodriguez, that loss to Esparza was her very first loss. So it's kind of obvious that she's very tough to finish, even with Rivas's ground skills. So that's why.
You see that? No, and I agree with your assessment, but the outlier, and I like outliers, is the fact that Amanda Ribas, according to her coach's Instagram, will probably be a featherweight when she steps into the octagon, like 65 kilos.
Jeez.
So that's a 20. Like, and at that point, the weight cuts even matter anymore? Like, I don't know, but that's, to me, I think that's the outlier. So I actually think that Ribas, who has essentially taken Paige Van Zandt's role, not only did she send her into the world of the bare knuckle fighting championship, but she essentially stole her role as America's sweetheart, even though she's Brazilian, right?
Yep.
The very thing that Paige Van Zandt quantified for UFC fans, Ribas feels like perfect.
Mm-hmm. And she's, not that Paige Van Zandt was a legitimate strawweight. She's still, I mean, I don't know what her role is in bare knuckle, because I mean, that promotion, there's not really championship belts really defended in that promotion, is there?
There are. Look no further than the misfit Christine Feria, who's a Police Gazette champion, and
okay. Fair. I'm not a big follower of the bare knuckle scene, but it seems like every time they promote like a main event, it's always something over the title fight. It seems like.
Yeah, well, this one obviously with Knuckle Mania, this is a paid pay-per-view. You can't just get it on the BKFC app. So, there's a reason why that is Knuckle Mania is essentially their version of UFC 257, right? Where they pay increase because they paid Paige Van Zandt a lot of money. They paid Conor McGregor a lot of money. So I'm just saying. But my pick is Ribas.
Yeah, my pick is Ribas. As I was saying, but Ribas, I think, has more of a, like she can break through that glass ceiling. I think there's a lot of projection on her future. Mm-hmm. So now, this one was supposed to be on the Fight Pass prelims. After all that madness, now Andrew Sanchez versus Macmoon Muradov is now all of a sudden second fight main card. So looking at Andrew Sanchez, he's coming off that win over Wellington Turman from August. Before that, lost to Marvin Vittori. Wins over Marc-Andre Barrio and Marcus Perez. Losses to Ryan James. Hey, a loss to Anthony Smith. I'd say that from 2017, that looks a lot better now, considering where Anthony Smith is. Macmoon, though, coming in, let's see, he's got wins over Trevor Smith, Alicio Chiquiro, Wendell Oliveira. He's had a very difficult 2020, unfortunately. I mean, he was supposed to fight, look at the names: Antonio Carlos Jr., Carl Roberson, Christoph Jocko, and Kevin Holland. And unfortunately, all those fights fell through. I've got a feeling Mr. Muradov is going to come in and want to make a statement in this one.
Oh, yes, he's going to wreck everything. He's going to conquer everyone. And unfortunately, Andrew Sanchez is going to be a footnote in history. I'm not going to say that he's like a Hamza Chimaev, but definitely those vibes are felt by me in terms of what he's going to do to kind of make up for lost time. So my pick is
Muradov.
Yeah.
All right. Now we got a flyweight fight, a very interesting women's flyweight fight. We got one of the veterans of this game, Jessica Evil Eye, who wants to get to a second title shot. So ended up losing to Cynthia Calvillo her last time out. Win over Viviane Araujo, who just defeated Roxanne Modafferi to make her name. Missed weight in both those times, although she did come in at the 125 mark for this fight. Obviously, we just said the loss to Shevchenko. She beat Faria, Rose Clark, and Chukagian on the route to that title shot, and she did look a lot better at 125. Bantamweight is just not her weight class, which I was scared with because, if she had come into this fight at overweight, they were probably going to have to force her to move up to bantamweight, which again, it doesn't seem like she handled the heavier weight class well, which you see from some fighters. She's taking on JoJo Calderwood. JoJo Calderwood, who has wins over Faria as well, lost to Chukagian, lost to Calvillo. Lipsky and Lee were good wins, though. She was in line to face Shevchenko. Then she took the stay active fight with Maya, ended up risking that contender spot, ended up very badly for her. I think she went in a little overconfident in that fight. So now here we are, two veterans of the sport. I see this as a big striking matchup. I would say it's going to be a lot of defensive work as well when it comes to striking. I think Calderwood's skills are just a bit more than I think I is at that stage where, the veteran stage where I think she's peaked a little. So she is where she is right now. I think Calderwood is going to have the fire under her to try to get that fight with Shevchenko back. So I'm going to go Calderwood by decision for me.
I couldn't agree with you anymore. And it's sad to say that Jessica Evil Eye, because she's in her 30s, right? But
yeah,
the level of competition it's almost like where Ronda was, right? Where it's just exponentially, the women's acumen for MMA has grown exponentially. And yes, she's had losses to top names and what have you. She's got wins over some good names. Andre KGB, look at no further, right? But I just think that as much as I want Jessica Evil Eye to win, because she's got evil eye, right? She's not the Taz Mexican Devil, right? She had an easy layup in terms of her fight moniker, right? And I feel this is a must win for her. But as much as it tugs at my heartstrings, I'm going to go with Joanne Calderwood, Bad Mofo Joe, for the unanimous decision win. And I mean, you could even see a third round KO with Eye just absolutely spent. And
I actually will follow up that I think this is also a must win for JoJo. Imagine you risked that title shot, you lost, and now this is a rebound fight. You get to fight a former title challenger and you lose this. That's going to bring a lot of questions for JoJo's fighting future as well.
Yes, it would. Yes, it was. And again, to kind of gamble in the worst way possible, and it reminds me, you basically alluded to the fact that it was over, she came in overconfident, right? And lost, right? And it reminds me a lot of Luke Rockhold, right? Luke Rockhold kind of underestimating Michael Bisping and losing the title, right?
Rockhold Bisping, Ronda Holm, Joanna Rose. It seemed like another one of those kinds of situations.
Absolutely. But the thing about it, what JoJo has on her side is she's on the other side of it. She's on the flip side of it, where she can learn from those mistakes and her own mistake of essentially giving up her title shot just so she can stay consistent. She is going to she's going to be a bat out of hell.
Definitely. All right. Co-main event, Dan Hooker, Michael Chandler. It's time to get into the beast matchups. So, Mr. Hooker, he is coming in off that loss to Dustin Poirier. Although, goes back to where we were talking about the title picture. Imagine if Hooker, Poirier had to come back over 3 rounds. If Hooker won even one of those rounds, Hooker was going to get the win. Who knows if this pay-per-view takes place as it is? Maybe it's Hooker and Conor in the main event, and Dustin's the one welcoming Chandler. Maybe, I don't know if Dustin's even fighting on this card at this point. And he's got wins. The Felder one, we can debate about that. Ala Quinta, absolute domination. That, I think, was his breakthrough fight into legitimate top contendership. James Vick, first round knockout, though that one doesn't look as good now because Vick is gone from the UFC. Edson Barboza, who was long the lightweight, gatekeeper. It was a bad loss there, but he has rebounded. And I mean, you look at those wins over Gilbert Burns, who's going to be challenging Kamaru Usman next month for the welterweight strap. A win over Jim Miller, Diakiese, Ross Pearson. Hooker has, he has risen. He is a legitimate fighter. Even in that loss to Poirier, if you think he wasn't legitimate there, I don't know what to tell you. And then we got Michael Chandler, the former Mr. Bellator, the face of that promotion, finally in the UFC, 3-time Bellator lightweight champion. And look at some of the fights that he has had. He's had, of course, going back to 2013, and I think the first one was, I'd say he's had a couple of wars with Eddie. Yeah, 2011 and 2013 wars with Eddie Alvarez, wars with David Rickles, a couple of nice fights. Bad, disappointing losses to Will Brooks, a couple wins over Patricky Pitbull, wins over Benson Henderson. I mean, as much as Benson Henderson is not the Benson Henderson of when they first fought or the UFC lightweight champion Benson Henderson, it's still Benson Henderson. And in that last fight he had in Bellator, he walloped Benson Henderson. I was not predicting a first round knockout from Chandler, and then he delivered. So, I mean, and that's one of the storylines coming into this. It's that, is the competition that Chandler has faced in Bellator, is that really UFC caliber? Is this too big of a step up? I think there's a half truth and a half lie to that. It's that, yes, Chandler, the competition that Chandler faced in Bellator, because remember, he had a couple of welterweight fights there too. Maybe not exactly the kind of competition he'll face in the UFC. I mean, there are good names like Benson Henderson, the Pitbull brothers. I think it's more a matter of fact that just the UFC's lightweight division is one of the toughest divisions in MMA on the planet. And there is no shortcut here for Mr. Chandler. He's going against Hooker. And we have seen it sometimes, guys who get tested when they move to a new division or a new promotion like UFC. I mean, look at Justin Gaethje. He and Michael Johnson had one of my favorite fights of 2017. And Gaethje, second round knockout. And Gaethje, even in his losses to Alvarez and Poirier, he rose his stock, and now he's a former interim champion. So this is going to be a big test here for Michael Chandler. And I don't know. The way for him to have success in this fight, he needs to use his wrestling. The problem is, I think he's going to use his striking. I think you're going to see similar storylines in the main event, co-main event, in that I think this one's going to be more a brawling style, which is big for Mr. Hooker. I feel like Mr. Hooker can take advantage of that. Possibly get the finish in the third round, I think. Because Chandler, I know we do have some questions about his chin. Obviously, the 60-second loss to Patricio Pitbull was pretty bad. The Brent Primus fight, I can't really count too much because that was a freak accident.
Yep.
But was finished by Will Brooks the second time around. So, I mean, and he has taken some big shots in those fights in Bellator, and he's going against Dan Hooker. Like I said, I think the brawling style is going to benefit Hooker more. Although this is a sleeper for Friday tonight, even compared to the main event, I think you got a couple of good options here.
No, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. That fight, the aforementioned last fight in Bellator with Benson Henderson, that was a Bellator title fight, wasn't it?
No, that was, I think, Chandler's. Was that his first or second fight after losing the title to Patricio? His second. Okay. He also knocked out Sidney Outlaw in the first round when they were in Japan.
Well, that being said, this to me might as well be a Bellator world title fight, right?
It has the makings of that. If this was Bellator, this would be a main event.
Right. I mean, we're kind of talking and debating about the state of the division in the UFC and where the championship fight should happen versus not happen or whatever. Let's just throw this up in the air. This is a Bellator world title fight. Let's just put that kind of panache on that. I'm good with that. So I would actually like to see Michael Chandler as somebody who essentially, him and Eddie Alvarez, there would not be a Bellator if not for these two gentlemen. And the trilogy over the title, that essentially made the Bellator title mean something. So with that all being said, I've got Chandler. I feel like, first off, I have a partiality to people who of other organizations that come over and win gold in the UFC, because I think that essentially raises the profile of their previous promotion, right? So with that all said, I want Chandler, much like his predecessor, Eddie Alvarez, as a former Bellator champion. I want him to go straight to the top. I like Chandler versus McGregor. That sticks out for me.
Hey, it's not every day when Bellator is mentioned on a UFC broadcast. I was shocked when Anik at the ceremonial weigh-ins dropped the former Bellator lightweight world champion. I'm like, what? I thought like Dana White was going to choke John Anik for that.
Yeah. No, and it's so crazy where we are. But I mean, again, even essentially Michael Chandler's entry as an alternate, that is almost a tipping of the hat of UFC
Yeah,
of
you never see that. There could have been. That's how crazy it is.
not
His
since
first
'95.
his first fight in the UFC had something happen. Could have been a title fight or an interim title fight. You never see that. That screams of old day UFC, not current product.
Yes.
But and even in a loss, I want to give Chandler some credit because remember Eddie Alvarez. You talk about his greatest rival in Bellator when he came over to the UFC on the card of the first McGregor Poirier fight. He ended up losing to Cowboy Cerrone, and what happened? Eddie Alvarez rebounded, went on a winning streak, defeated Rafael Dos Anjos for the lightweight championship in 2016. So, even if it's going to have to take a very bad showing for me to lower any expectations for Michael Chandler. And I don't think we're going to see any bad showing for Michael Chandler tonight, win or lose.
No, not at all. So Dan Hooker can essentially take a loss here and still be, in contendership, right?
Yeah, I think this is a fight of the night. This could be a fight of the night.
Absolutely. And it's crucial for Chandler's, it almost reminds me of Jake Shields when Jake Shields came over from Strikeforce as their last champion, and I just want Chandler to win because I don't think he can take a loss in the grand scheme of things.
Definitely. And now here we go. To finish things up here, the main event, Conor and Dustin. For those of you who are not aware, let's look at their past. Dustin, the win over Hooker, the loss to Khabib. The win over Max was great. That was a great fight. Great finish of Eddie Alvarez. Great finish of Justin Gaethje. Anthony Pettis, that was a rib injury. Yeah, rib injury from body triangle. Win over Jim Miller. The loss to Michael Johnson, I was saying this because he has had a great streak ever since moving up to lightweight after the first McGregor loss. The loss to Michael Johnson, bear in mind, that was a Michael Johnson who was legitimate at lightweight because Michael Johnson's fight after that, I think, was against Khabib. So you're talking about, I think he has done better for himself, so much better in terms of how he looks, how he, is a star, and just how good he looks in the octagon, both, figure-wise, body-wise, and how he looks in terms of his skills at lightweight than he ever was at featherweight. And then McGregor, of course, this fight with Cerrone last year, Khabib in 2018, fighting Floyd Mayweather in 2017, his criminal history over the last years or so. So I'd say I don't think there's much to be said about Conor that has not already been said by everybody in the media. So just looking at this matchup, and I think there's a similar story here. Conor, I know all the fans of Conor hate when this is mentioned, but it's a fact. He sucks on the ground. And Dustin, he's a great boxer, Dustin, but you know what? He has some ground skills. He took Dan Hooker down, I believe, in their fight. Yeah. So I feel like Poirier is going to have to shoot in, hit inside, get some takedowns, not Khabib style, of course, because there's very few people, if not anybody, and I doubt it's anybody on the level of Khabib. But if he shoots some takedowns, that might help him in this fight. If this is going to be 25 minutes of standing and trading, I for some reason I think Conor's going to win. Conor has some of the most legit power at the lightweight and just in the UFC. The fact that he caught Aldo and put him to sleep in seconds. I mean, you can debate all you want about the Cerrone fight, because this is not the Cerrone of 2014, 2013. But we have seen some surprises from McGregor. I'm thinking about and looking at McGregor's fight history. You know what I feel like this is going to remind me of? Because I highly doubt that McGregor's finishing him in 60 seconds. Dustin Poirier does not have that bad of a chin. Come on. He has a good chin. He has been in some wars. I still think Conor could finish, but more maybe a mid-fight finish. Late second, third, maybe even the fourth. And I'm saying that out loud as I'm thinking about it. It reminds me of the Chad Mendes fight, because Chad Mendes got McGregor in trouble very early on in that fight. So I feel like this is what it could be, a reminiscent of McGregor Mendes from UFC 189. But at the end of the day, I think McGregor's striking is just really good. I think this one can be a coin flip because Poirier can catch him. He has got that power too. but I think McGregor has next level power and precision and timing. I'm gonna go with Conor. Love him or hate him.
No, Connor. Who owns Jameson whiskey? I don't know. Who owns Jack Daniels? I don't know. Who owns TMZ? I don't know. I know all of those three are not getting into a UFC octagon with all of their wealth and stepping in and still wanting to challenge themselves, right? Conor McGregor has Proper 12, Mac Life, and a litany of other companies that he's been able to foster and create since. I mean, not only was going into that Floyd fight, he was the highest paid mixed martial artist of all time. Still, to this day, remains to be seen, right? And then essentially parlays that in the the notoriety and the purse of that Floyd fight into Proper 12. Again, you know the fact that Proper 12 right now for an Irish whiskey. How long has Jameson been around? Guess what? Probably 100, if not thousands of years, right?
And here's Proper 12, only around like 2 years or so, and it's
2 years, and is outselling it in North America, right? And again, you're not going to get the Jameson guy, whoever owns that person, or the family that owns Jameson, to fight and get punched in the face for, even if it is $75 million. They'll make that money other ways, right? So there, in any of those, if you're looking at that theoretical, tournament, right? You've got, maybe not Ferguson anymore, but Khabib, Conor, Gaethje, and Poirier is my pick. He hasn't fought.
Did I not say that? I said even though McGregor's my pick, to win, he has to get this fight down to the ground a couple of times. Again, maybe not to the point of Khabib where he can submit McGregor, but if he takes McGregor down, can hold him down, overwhelm him with the striking, Poirier, if this goes to a decision, Poirier could legitimately, have a 50-50 shot, maybe even better if this goes to a decision.
This is absolutely 50-50, but here's the crazy thing about it, and it kind of spoke to me as we were getting into the promotion of this event, right? The star power of Conor McGregor, right? Love him or hate him, he's a polarizing figure for sure. Right? But there is a reason. If you put in any of the other names, not Conor McGregor, in that top 4 or 5, ranking in the UFC, are with those fight and those people fighting each other with a championship belt, a lineal championship belt at stake. Is that worth an extra 15 some odd dollars, in addition to what you're paying? No, absolutely not. Right? He's the outlier. And for Conor to continue to come back and give to the sport of MMA for Red Panty Night to commence, right? Even the fact that we're seeing a non-trash talking, there has been no trash talk in terms of the build-up to the second.
Well, you can add to all those factors that lightweight, like I said, probably one of the toughest divisions in MMA, the UFC lightweight division, with all that star power and all that potential.
Right, absolutely. And do you think the casual that is paying that extra money for the UFC, right, not knowing that they could have, the previous UFC Incarnation pay-per-view basically was $15 less, $20 less, or whatever, do you think they care? No.
Because McGregor's the name.
Right. Do you think they care that he lost to Floyd, that he lost to Khabib? Nobody. Don't care.
Conor has that crazed fan base that will tune in for every fight.
Right, and that's what I think. That is the outlier that is going to, because there's going to be fans. There's going to be fans in the EFAD arena tonight, right? Much like they were in the 2 previous Fight Island cards, right? So I think that energy, right, and somebody that can harness that energy and use it for his own will and his own good, nobody does it better than Conor. So Conor might get a 3rd round. But I could be wrong. And it goes into 4th round, and it's all Poirier. But if there's a finish happening in the first 3 rounds, it's going to
be Conor. Yep. Definitely. Good to see we're on the same page of that.
Yep, absolutely. So, again, Thomas, you're the man with the plan. So you know what's going on. I mean, fan-sided and a litany of other things. And, of course, Empty the Bench live. My goodness. So you've got the most accurate picks and insight in all of the MMA sphere. So I'm, don't just take according to Woods' pick for it, but if Albano is saying that Conor's going to win or it could be in the later rounds, one Dustin Diamond Poirier, then guess what? Take that to the bank and cash that.
Too much. Mr. Woods, thank you so much, man, for joining me. It's an absolute pleasure. Hopefully we can do this again sometime soon. Hopefully I'll come on to Voodoo in the Woods. So actually, let me go you again. Follow him at Adam K. Woods on Twitter. The Voodoo in the Woods podcast on YouTube, I believe, correct?
Yeah, it's actually Voodoo in the Woods on YouTube, and According to Woods also on YouTube.
On YouTube.
Facebook and Twitch, and you can find me there, According to Woods, across everything except for Twitter, where it's Adam K. Woods, and that's it.
Perfect. All right, and it's 7:00, and actually, it's 7:00, and the early prelims are beginning. Amir and Zagas are actually about to make their walks to the octagon. So everyone, go tune in. It's going to be an exciting night on Albano, and we'll see you next time.
Empty the bench everywhere. Empty the bench. Come on.
There we go.